Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. I am here with Rachel Aichler today. She is a family nurse practitioner and she is also an entrepreneur focusing on self care, and her brand is called Self Care for You. Thank you for joining us today, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your journey and how you became a family nurse practitioner and an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So I graduated in 2007 from George Mason University with my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and began my registered nursing career. I'd been a nursing assistant prior to that, but I became a registered nurse and left the Washington, D.C. metro area to move out to Phoenix to be closer to my parents and other family who had retired and moved out here. So I was the only kid left out on the East Coast. So moved out closer to them and found myself working at the Veterans Health Administration, otherwise known as the VA hospital in downtown Phoenix. I began there at the beginning of 2008 and I spent 13 years there as a registered nurse. I started out in the surgical ICU, and then after a year of that, it was just very stressful and a high pressure place to begin as an RN. I went up to the telemetry and step down unit, which other nurses think is high pressure, but for me, it was perfect. It was go, go, go. People coming in with heart attacks, strokes, seizures, all kinds of things, substance withdrawal. A lot of mental health issues. I am the daughter of a retired military veteran. And I also, my grandparents, my father's parents, my grandmother and my grandfather were both in World War II. My grandfather fought in Normandy and then across Europe. And then my grandmother, from 1943 to 1945, in the midst of World War II, she was a airplane radio engineer. And she's about 4'11", and she used to hop onto those planes and check the radios before they went off and things like that. My grandma was a very tough, strong woman. This may or may not tie into our story as we go along here, which is why I mentioned my grandma. I was very close with both of my grandmas, actually, my mom's mom too. But the military side is my dad's side. And then while I was in the VA in 2016, I started having my kids. By the time I had my third kid, I injured my back. And I thought, my gosh, I really love patient care. It was just so fulfilling and rewarding to me. And working with the veteran population, especially, was very rewarding for me because they are a marginalized population. Out in this community, they do tend to be underserved for a lot of different reasons. But I am a passionate advocate and going to work every day and advocating for those who didn't have family or friends or anyone else to advocate for them on their behalf while they were in the hospital and ill was really fulfilling to me. And so I really loved that. Decided I was going to become a family nurse practitioner. So I was working after I recouped from my back and all that. I was able, with physical therapy and everything, to get back to working in the hospital again, 12-hour shifts, barely ever nursing assistants on the floor to help. So I was basically an RN, a nursing assistant, medical secretary, like everything. Sometimes housekeeper, like every single role. So I did that from 2006 to 2020, got my family nurse practitioner. Wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. I just knew that I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. I wanted more responsibility and independence. Here in the state of Arizona, where I live, practitioners can practice independently. So that's why I started my own private practice after working for a couple other practices. I did not feel fulfilled, and it was very stressful being pressured to have a specific time limit and see a certain amount of patients in the day. And I just thought, I don't need to be a company's workhorse. I'll be my own workhorse and not have a middleman take the money. So anyway, graduated with my family nurse practitioner and got certified at the end of 2020. That was after I had been working acute care inpatient in the hospital during 2020, before and during. And so that was a very stressful period for everyone. it definitely caused a lot of anxiety in all of us healthcare providers working on the front line and not knowing if the patient who was coming in, because at the time, at the beginning of 2020, we had no testing. There were not even hopes of a vaccine yet. It was all just very ambiguous, and it caused a lot of stress and anxiety. And so I was relieved to get my NP at the end of 2020. And then unfortunately, I had some women's health issues that caused me to an abnormal mammogram. I'll just throw that out there. That preceded other events that caused me to have to retire from working in the hospital and go out. I took off about 2 years. I did not work at all, and I had multiple surgeries and therapies and things like that. During that time, I also filed for divorce. 2020, during the pandemic, I was married to my ex husband. We'd been married for 13 years. We had 3 children together, 3 boys, mutually very much wanted. But by the end of 2020, I could not work due to my health issue. My ex husband had been a self proclaimed entrepreneur for the last 6 years, and his business could not get off the ground, and he refused to get a job, even a part-time job, doing computer programming, which is his degree in training and expertise, really. So I figured at that point, if I have a partner who is not going to step up to the plate and provide for the family, I had always been the primary breadwinner, the one who kept the roof over our head, the bills paid, and then after working 2 or 3 12-hour shifts, I would come home and be a mom. And when there were babies, change diapers, breastfeed, grocery shop, cook, clean. I was everything and everything in every place. And that's part of my personality. I tend to be a go-getter and ambitious. And then at one point, I was working in the hospital full time, being a mom full time and the primary breadwinner, and getting my master's of science in nursing and training as a family nurse practitioner. So but I made it out alive. And I always kept my eye on like the main goal, which was like, I know that I can make a difference in people's lives. And that's basically the long story of why I wanted to become a nurse practitioner. Is I want to make a real impact in the world and hopefully, touch people's lives who may not have been able to be touched by other providers or other people in their lives. I want to help them gain insight and empowerment from that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story and
Mhm.
taking us through your journey.
Thank
It's
you.
such an impactful journey, and even though there were many challenges and many obstacles, they have shaped you to who you are and they have brought you this far. None of those challenges sound easy. So, congratulations to you for overcoming all of those, especially as a mother and someone who was working a full time job. And it wasn't just like an office job, it was working at the hospital, and those
Yes.
hours can be really demanding.
Yep. 12 hours running around, I would have anywhere from 4 to 6 patients a day. Some of them were bedridden and no nursing assistants. It's a very, very physical job and very emotional and stressful job. It definitely had worn on me towards the end.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm proud of you for taking a step away to take care of your mental health and your physical health and to be there for your family as well. Going back to when you said you decided to file for divorce, what are some signs or reasons that made you want to or pushed you to go that way?
Well, I had seen it coming about 3 years earlier. There was
Okay.
one night when I woke up and I had a panic attack. I had a nightmare that we got divorced. And, when I got married, probably like most people, I thought it was forever. And we were madly in love for the first 8 years. And he did step up. He was the kind of father. I mean, he cut the umbilical cords when the kids were born. He was by my side in the hospital, gave them bottles, changed their diapers, like gave them baths, like stepped up. And he was a good dad in the beginning. My ex husband legitimately has mental health diagnoses. However, he has always been very resistant to get diagnosed or even get care. And ironically, it was always me seeking out a therapist. I've dealt with generalized anxiety disorder and depression issues off and on since I was 20 years old. And I've had therapy and I've taken SSRIs for it off and on since then. And there were definitely times throughout our marriage, and it escalated towards the end, where he used to ridicule me as, oh, you're just having so much anxiety, and kind of minimize my concern and make it seem like I was just this like worry ward, and I was worrying for no reason, when they were legitimate reasons, like, how are we going to get the bills paid? I don't want to wind up on the street. I don't want to lose our house. Things like that. Each year, I filed at the beginning of 2021. So in 2018, he's a computer programmer. He got very involved into crypto, and he's highly intelligent. He also grew up in a dysfunctional household, an abusive household. Had he been nurtured, he probably could have gone to MIT. That's how smart of a guy he is. And he probably could have been very successful with his business had he been willing to work and listen to other people. But he was able to make about $100,000 on crypto from dollars, like within 2 days. We had a very large master bedroom. Our desks were corner desks, like back to back. So I looked over at his computer, and he was on doing the whole crypto thing. And within a couple of weeks, I just saw that money go down. But when he got to 100, he's like, babe, we got to 100, this and that. And I'm like, okay, just cash out now. Cash out like half of it, and I'll just call that your annual salary, because he had never financially contributed to the family. And at that point in 2018, it was like, primary breadwinner, primary caregiver at home. I mean, I was the one doing all the babies and kids' laundry and folding it and putting it away and cooking and cleaning, like just so much go, go, go work. And meanwhile, he would zone out on the computer doing research or whatever he was doing. Towards the end, he would binge out on Netflix. I would come home and it was like Netflix. There was definitely a porno addiction involved in there, which was very toxic to our relationship towards the end, toxic to me personally, because it was not, I don't know if this is TMI, but we had a very good sex life our entire marriage. It wasn't like I was withholding sex from him. It was mutual, but there were some things in there that would definitely point to abuse of a situation, like a man being married to a woman and the man always being entitled to sex because she's his wife. So there were definitely issues like that. So yeah, the main reason, not wanting to go get a job. So 2018 was the crypto thing. He lost all the money. I was furious because once again, he had not contributed a penny, and all the financial pressure of our family was on me. And he still refused to get a job because he had hopes of his entrepreneurial business succeeding. But he had 6 years to do that. And then 2019, that was our 10-year marriage. Our 10-year marriage anniversary, I was laying in bed. I had to have foot surgery. I developed really bad plantar fasciitis from being on my feet for 12-hour shifts. And we get a knock on the door, and I hear some kind of like argument back and forth at our front door. And it turns out he was getting sued by Discover Card because he had not paid his credit card bill for 6 months. And then the truth came out that apparently he was planning on filing for bankruptcy independently. He had always been a businessman, we'll call it. But yeah, he did have a small business he was making a little bit of money off of, and he had credit cards that had huge lines. So he was $150,000 in debt, in credit card debt, $150,000 in debt. And I never knew one bit about it. So I don't know how long it took to accumulate that. But and he was planning on doing bankruptcy behind my back. And at that point, we'd been married for 10 years. So you would hope, and he had always been the one doing our taxes, in charge of the finances. I was the primary breadwinner, but he, he's good with numbers and this and that. And I always trusted him to be responsible and honest. And that was the number one, like, huge betrayal in 2019. And that was also interspersed with 2016 and the whole election there was a lot of tension between Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I had said at one point in one of our arguments, because he was kind of watching Trump and saying, oh, well, maybe he would be a good president and this and that. And I told him, if you vote for Trump, I'm going to divorce you. And that would be a statement that he would continually hold against me. The truth of the matter is, the reason I did not want him, I knew that I would divorce him, not based on politics, but based on the fact that the type of person that Trump is, he's a misogynist, he's a narcissist, he's a bad person. And if you relate to him and you look up to him and think that he would be a wonderful leader, then you are not the person that I should be married to, because that is a reflection of you and your values. And so that was the main part why I would divorce him. So, he could have lied to me. Maybe he did vote for Trump. I don't know. Looking back on it, it doesn't matter. But it was just the part about the values that was very insightful for me. And I made a mental note. So, yeah, 2019. And then in 2020, he definitely has an OCD component. And he actually has a lot of anxiety that he's never dealt with, and depression issues, major depression, like laying around and doing nothing. And no matter how supportive or loving of a wife that I was for everything, going to doctor's visits with him, trying to encourage him because I had great health insurance. I mean, I was 200% supportive of him. But the thing is, towards the end, it was like, if you don't help yourself, I cannot help you as your wife. You have to help yourself. I'm giving you all the resources. You're not using them. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it, basically.
So
So,
true.
yeah. So in 2020, he thought, he had developed the quote, dad bod. When we met 13 years earlier, or actually, no, we were married from 2009 to 2021. We were married for 12 years. So we had both been in perfect shape and exercised. He'd always been into working out. Towards the end, he gained altogether throughout our marriage probably like 65 pounds and wound up with a gut. He was still really strong. I'm 5'5" and he's 6 foot tall and strong, very strong build. And he's always lifted weights. So he's a very strong man. So, and again, that could be a side note for later in our discussion if we address that. But anyway, in 2020, he decided, after binging out on YouTube videos about veganism, he decided he was going to become a vegan. And then he binge watched videos about intermittent fasting. I mean, all this pretty much pointed to, it was probably like the last 3 years, probably all pointed to bipolar, actually, because he had a lot of manic episodes where, with the crypto, staying up all night and all this money, I had no idea where it was coming from or what he was doing with it. Meanwhile, I was the primary breadwinner. In 2020, the last straw, so that each year, that one big thing. So 2020, the big thing was that I went to a 12-hour shift, and I had just gone to Costco the day before and spent about $400 in all kinds of high quality organic produce, organic cheese, eggs, like everything. Like, I didn't buy junk food for our house. I grew up in a health conscious household and also working on a heart floor. And with lots of patients who had heart disease and diabetes, things like that. Like, I was very conscious of that. But he decided to throw out, while I was at work for 12 hours and he was home with the 3 boys, he threw out everything that didn't meet the vegan diet. So, like, a whole bag of frozen chicken breast, like literally about $400 worth of groceries from Costco in the garbage. And I came home from
Wow.
12-hour shift. I worked about a half an hour away. And the kids were sitting at our kitchen counter. My ex-husband was pacing back and forth, talking to them. And the kids all had, I think, like rice and lentils in their bowls. My boys are good eaters and they're versatile eaters. So there are positive things that can come from anything. And they like vegetables. But he was like preaching the word to them about veganism, and proceeded to send emails to my kids' teachers, with the YouTube videos and like telling the teachers they were overweight and they need to follow. Like he really crossed a lot of boundaries at that point. It was embarrassing. It was very embarrassing because
Wow.
I was his wife and I was associated with that. And that 100% was not me. I'm not a judgmental provider or person in general. I mean, so he was really trying to push the veganism thing. And the fact that he had no remorse or no respect for the fact that he threw out all those groceries. And, I just worked my butt off for a 12-hour shift. Like, I mean, that's $400. It's like you think about how many hours of work that was that he just threw out without remorse. And his response to me was, I saved your life. I'm saving your life. That was his response.
Wow.
So not only did he not have remorse, he was also justified in what he did. And so that was definitely one of the last straws where I was like, I can't live my life like this. And I'm not going to, most importantly, my kids were 7, 9, and 11 at the time. I was not going to let my boys grow up in a household like this because I knew that it would harm them. It would harm their mental health, their development. In every way, it would harm their development. And I just did not want them to grow up in a dysfunctional household like that. So I originally divorced my ex husband on behalf of my children. Also, towards the end, he started to have a lot of temper issues. He would yell at the boys. My oldest son has really bad ADHD and he's on medication for it, but it's still every day is a roller coaster. He has really good moments where I think he doesn't need medication, he's fine. And then other moments where it's just so overwhelming. And this has been, the signs and symptoms showed when he was 18 months old. It's not like something that just developed overnight. It was something I'd been used to dealing with. And he was used to dealing with too, because it was his son. And towards the end, he really lost his patience and he would say just horrible things to the kids, so emotionally abusive. And then he would berate me in front of the children, like in our bedroom. He would just tear me down and say some terrible things. Say things like, you're the man of the house. And I would tell him, I don't want to be the man of the house. I want you to step up. I never wanted to be the woman and the man of the house. And he just didn't get that. But towards the end, he would chase the kids into their bedrooms. They would hide under their beds. And he would like try to lift up, because he was very strong, he would try to lift up the bed frame to get at them. He would pound his hand on the wall or on the kitchen counter, passive threatening things like that. But it definitely got kind of scary towards the end. So I just decided I have to divorce him. So I filed. And it wasn't probably until a year later that I realized, or maybe even a little bit longer, because I'd been so giving and taking care of my patients at the hospital, taking care of my mentally ill husband, taking care of all 3 kids and my oldest son with his special needs. I neglected myself and didn't realize what I needed and that I was lacking. So probably at least a year, maybe longer, was when I realized I really needed to divorce him for myself as well, not just for the kids. And that was like a slap in the face, really.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing the journey and like how from where it was. It sounds like it was really good in the beginning. Like you said, for like the first 8 years. And
Absolutely.
it blows my mind how people can change throughout the years and go from this caring and loving person and the man of the house, like you were saying, to not paying any attention. Going back to the beginning of your story. So it's crazy that you say this, but you said that you had a nightmare one time and you woke up with like a panic attack because you thought you and your ex husband were getting a divorce.
Yes.
Backstory, I was married once upon a time too, and I actually experienced the same thing. I
Oh,
remember my
interesting.
ex was so mean. He was always name calling and always gaslighting
Yeah.
that I remember I was so afraid of him leaving me. I had a nightmare that we were getting a divorce and I just woke up in so much panic. Like I think I woke up crying.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's just when we're sleeping and our brain just like processes things and our subconscious anxieties come out. when we're at our ultimate relaxation, that's when you can't press it down any further. The reality comes.
Yeah. Would you well, I know that, like, my ex-husband, like, he had narcissistic traits, and I didn't know it at the time, but eventually as time went on and after I left, like, I learned that he was a narcissist, and
Absolutely.
like you said, like, thankful that, like, we got out alive.
Yeah.
What would you say that, like, your ex-husband was narcissistic as well?
100%. I mean, he checks the box for the entire criteria for narcissists. We had a house that we had bought, although I paid probably 9 out of 10 mortgage payments for that house. Anyway, we were married at the time for what it's worth. And we sold the house in April 2022. The divorce had been finalized about 5 months earlier. He was supposed to have the kids every other weekend. And once during the week, he was supposed to pay child support the first of every month. And what happened was that the day after we sold the house, he packed up whatever few belongings he had and made the trek back home from Arizona to Illinois, where he's from originally, from Chicago. And he didn't say goodbye to the kids, didn't give me a heads up. Um, it had been me and the kids anyway for that year prior to the divorce finalization and selling the house, because the second I filed, he literally packed up every belonging of his in our closet. We had a casita, a guest house on our property, moved himself into the casita, which was about 10 minutes away from our main house, and literally had nothing to do with the kids. Literally, it was me. The second I filed, it was me and the kids. And mind you, I had just had a major breast surgery. My parents are retired and they're 10 minutes away. And had it not been for that, it would have been a lot more challenging to get through that time.
Thank God you were able to have your family there and that they were so close by, not like in another state or an hour
Absolutely.
away.
And it's
Yeah.
things like that, like these kind of challenging times, mindfulness really, and gratefulness, being grateful for what you do have in the hardest of times, is so strengthening and inspiring. If you try to, instead of focusing on all the negative things like the divorce, the fact that he, abandoned his children essentially in every way, just being grateful for those things. Like, thank God I had my parents. Thank God I had a house. I mean, there's a lot to be grateful. Thank God I had health insurance. Thank God I had a car. Thank God I could drive. Thank God I had my body and full use of my body and my brain. I just find that focusing on the things that you're grateful for are very, very helpful when you go through the darkest of times in life, instead of focusing on the crisis and the trauma, to find the lights. And that's not about comparing yourself to other people, and if they were in your situation, what they would or wouldn't have. But it's really about focusing on yourself. Like, I had a friend once, I was telling her about how when I go to yoga classes, I'm always self conscious that I'm not doing the right moves and this and that. And she was like, well, you shouldn't be looking at anyone else. And I've always kind of like filed that in the back of my head. She was so right. I mean, not just literally right, but it's true. Your practice should be looking at yourself and not comparing yourself to other people and being a perfectionist. And being a perfectionist, judging yourself, things like that are very self destructive.
I think there is no such thing as perfect, and we all know that, but we're our own worst critic. And I think just coming from a narcissistic relationship, they expect you to be perfect. And I was so naive to this. And I was so naive to what it was, what the red flags were, what the signs were. But I was always getting judged the way I look, the way I walk, the way I talk, everything. So, from your personal perspective, for people who might not know or be aware, what are some like red flags or signs of narcissism?
A big red flag, and something that I've become more aware of, is in the beginning, they will love bomb you. I had a boyfriend prior to my ex husband who love bombed me. Wanted me to move in right away. I was in my late 20s, already looking to get married and have kids and have a family. That was really important to me. I wouldn't say I was desperate, but definitely I dated a lot, and it was hard to find a lot of men who like wanted to settle down at that point. There were a lot of players out there.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to settle down and have kids. That was like really, really important to me. So the big red flag is right away when they first meet you, they're love bombing you. They are giving you all kinds of jewelry. They want to be with you 100% of the time, always calling you. You hang over their house, they come over your house, you go do things together 100% of the time. And it seems very innocent, like puppy love. That's what you want to do when you're first in love. You just want to spend every waking moment with each other and do everything together. But that evolves, and what that turns into is someone has to be in control of that situation. And so the control part comes out later on when he's very comfortable with you. And then he's able to say, like, your hair looks much better than natural color. You shouldn't dye your hair anymore. Or, why are you getting fake eyelashes? It's too much. You don't need fake eyelashes. You're beautiful naturally. So things that are kind of like complimenting you, but also criticizing you and making you doubt yourself and your appearance.
Mhm.
Um, or saying things to me like, Rachel, you have a lot of anxiety. You're just worrying too much and this and that. Basically, making you not trust yourself anymore. It's in the beginning, it's the love bombing, and then it's a slow process. It's kind of like, honestly, it's kind of like when, in the military, like human intelligence. If they get someone and they are interrogating them.
Yeah.
They basically, what these abusers do, whether it's emotional, physical, or a combination of both, you're their hostage. And they are messing with you, with your head, to do anything they can to disempower you and take you over as belonging, basically. You will be my wife. Of course, if he said this to me, I'd be outraged because I've always been a very strong, independent. I consider myself a feminist.
Mhm.
But what I found is a lot of strong, independent women, we are the ones who wind up getting into these relationships because we find a man who's stronger than us and has that manly side, like, I'm going to give you strong, secure comfort. That strong, secure comfort can sometimes be impure. And
Mhm.
that's when they don't respect you and your individuality and support you in that. Your appearance, your goals in life, your personality, your social life, things that keep you alive and make you happy. Getting out and meeting with girlfriends or going to an exercise class, if they dissuade you from doing things like that, well, that's another sign, is trying to isolate you. Saying bad things about your family or your best friend and making you not trust the people that you've always been the closest with and trusted the most. So making you question those relationships and those people who are the most supportive to you, and you actually need them in your life during that time, but you push them away because you trust this man who is, Romeo, and has you convinced that he 100% has your best interest in mind, and he is your strongest advocate, when it couldn't be anything far from the truth. He's actually your strongest enemy.
I think something that's like really powerful that you said is they come off really strong in the beginning. They act like this tough man that they're going to be there for you, they're going to provide, but they're actually just coding those words over their insecurities. And then it causes us to believe it because if they see a strong, independent woman, they're like, oh, like I want to keep her around, I want to be around her. But they know internally they can't provide what we need. So they put on a mask. And I think that's a really scary thing, too.
It is, because you think that you know who you are dealing with and will be dealing with, and it's really something. And again, that's also the narcissist side of it, where they are really good at presenting themselves a certain way and making you believe that their concerns and care for you are genuine. Unfortunately, you don't find out the reality of the situation until something happens. Like when I got divorced, he packed up and moved to Chicago and abandoned his children. I mean, forget me and the fact that I was now burdened entirely raising three kids on my own, one with special needs. But he had no remorse. He was the victim. In the end, he was the victim. He is the victim. I broke his heart. I took advantage of his kindness. Forget the 12 years that we had spent together and everything and I had done to support him and tried to be the like most loving, caring wife. That is just he had no remorse. He was the victim. I divorced him. Even to this day, and we've been divorced for 3 years, I speak to him on the phone and he'll tell me that I broke up the family. And it just does not compute in his brain that he broke up the family. I was 100% all in. I would have stood by his side through thick and thin. I wouldn't have cared what type of mental health issue, what type of physical health issue, 100% behind him, as I had always been, trying to get him all different kinds of health care, therapy, I mean, like counseling, mental health therapy. But the thing is, when you refuse to do those things and you're hurting other people, that's when I have to tap out. Because if you refuse to do those things, that's fine. But once you have children and there's someone else in that relationship that you're actually harming emotionally and spiritually in that way, it's time to get out immediately. Because that person
Absolutely.
does, the truth is, they don't care about anyone but themselves. And this is still the same story 3 years later. And he's living across the US, and I'm raising our children by myself. And there have been trials and tribulations where my now 14-year-old who has ADHD, that has not been easy raising, first of all, boys, and I'm a woman. So, boys in adolescence and puberty and teenage years by myself. I did grow up with brothers, so close in age, so that prepared me. And I was kind of a tomboy. So, that prepared me for that. But there have been some hard times with my oldest son with school and issues like that. That what's heartbreaking is my son calls his father, and his father will tell me what to do, but will not do it as if he's accountable. Like he'll tell me to tell the school this, tell the school that. And I've always been a gigantic advocate. I could probably write a book out of all the emails. And being a healthcare provider as well, I cite professional, like scholarly evidence as well. Like I've become a civil rights attorney, essentially standing up for my son. But that burden, even when we were married, fell on me. But it's hard when your son, who looks up to his father, and he's my oldest son, so he spent the most time with him, when he calls his dad, and now that he's in his teenage years, 14, it breaks my heart that he calls his father and his father is not supportive and is sometimes even emotionally damaging to him, to the point where no matter how difficult it got with my son, I would never send him to live with his father because I know it would be emotionally destructive. It would take away his value, his sense of self worth, 100%.
It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. It's like you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make the horse drink the water.
Yeah,
Something that I can totally relate with you on so many different levels. But I've learned since leaving my ex is that you can't fix other people's problems for them because it's a normal thing for us females. We want to nurture, we want to be there for other people, but it's a tough pill to swallow when you have to learn that you can't fix other people's problems for them, but you can support them while they figure it out on their own. And I
absolutely.
think that's a really important lesson that we need to normalize more.
Absolutely. You're not failing your duty as the wife, girlfriend, partner, whoever, in your caregiving. Your caregiving is providing the emotional support and whatever other support they need for their therapy to get through that. But if they don't put in the effort, that is not your lack of caregiving, and you do not need to bear that burden. That is not on you, that is on that other person. That whole mind game that these type of abusers do, narcissists, is that they turn it around on you and make it seem like it's your failure, and that gets us on the perfectionist side, definitely. Like you don't like to fail, you want to be successful, and especially if it's someone you love and care about genuinely. So they know that that's a sensitive spot that they can turn around on you and manipulate you by telling you that you are not being a supportive wife or girlfriend. And that's very hurtful when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into helping someone to have them then tell you that you're not being supportive.
Totally. What are some things that have helped you overcome and to start your healing journey after leaving your ex? Because that was a long relationship, a lot of obstacles. So, what are some things that have helped you?
I had therapy. It began a few months prior to my divorce. It was actually my therapist who had been through also a dysfunctional, abusive marriage who kind of was able to pinpoint right away what I was going through, even though I couldn't identify it. So she did not tell me to get a divorce, but when I started to throw that around, she was definitely supportive of it. And my ex-husband blamed my filing on her. Oh, it's your therapist, this and that. And that's another thing these abusers do is they say, it's the influence of good friends or a new person you meet who happens to be a strong, empowering person. The second you start to get your sense of independence back and an inkling of like, oh, this is not right, what's going on in this dynamic, that's when they really hate those other people and want to separate you from them. But the therapy was crucial. I also, in 2020, had gotten into practicing meditation. I just happened to see an advertisement for the app Calm, and they had like a free 30-day trial. And when I went on there, I always thought, no, there's no way. That's for like really like suave, like celebrities living in Hollywood do meditation and all the fancy yoga and all that. That's not me. But it couldn't be farther from the truth. And I mean, that was back in 2020, and it seems like it's been a lot more normalized since then. But I still recommend meditation, and people are very intimidated by it. But what was wonderful, there is a gentleman on Calm named Jeff Warren, and he tells his story how his whole life he had ADHD and the hyperactive type, and well, in all types, but definitely hyperactive things that had gotten him into trouble. And he had found meditation saved his life. And I was particularly interested because I have my son who has ADHD. So I thought, maybe this can be something I can empower him with if I learn. So he had these, I think it's probably like 10 videos, and each one is like I think the longest one is like 7 minutes. Step by step, how to meditate. So that really spelled it out for me. And then I started exploring the Calm app, and they have these 10-minute guided meditations. And what I started finding is that when I would do those, when I regularly started practicing 10-minute guided meditations, and they always have a really like spiritual, thoughtful like post at the end that makes you like sit when you're after that like 10 minutes of like closing your eyes and centering yourself, and like it's really about coming to yourself again, not focusing on anything else around you, anyone else's problems, not even focusing on your own problems, just focusing on you and your body and your soul and your mind. And when you practice that on a regular basis, and I mean 10 minutes out of your day, there were times I did it in the morning and in the evening, but even a few times a week, whenever you can, even if it's once a week in the beginning, just making the effort to do that will pay off in the end, because it helps you become a more mindful person. And it has helped me become a more mindful person and be able to reflect on my feelings, my reactions to situations, communications, whether it's with my patients, with my family and friends, or even at the grocery store. It just makes you a more mindful, aware person. And it's also a good practice. As I had mentioned, I've had issues with major anxiety since I was 20. So it really has helped me not to become overwhelmed. Sometimes when we have so many stresses and pressures on us, our brain just goes, woo, and then it just like shuts off. And that's when we go into panic anxiety mode. Having a dog is also helpful. I mean, there have been a lot of studies that have shown that when we pet an animal, I also have a cat, and when we pet animals, it releases oxytocin in both humans and in the animals, and it helps create that like bonding. And I definitely find that when I'm really overwhelmed, really sad, really anxious about something, if I go just cuddle with my dog or pet my cat and she starts purring, it just really helps to ground me mentally. And it's amazing. The second you ground yourself, then the chemicals in your body start to like calm down, and you don't realize this is happening, but it like releases endorphins, happy chemicals that and dopamine that make you relax and calm down and come back to yourself and reality again and see that, you know what, things are not that bad. They're manageable and we're going to get through this. And also reminding myself, just get through this day. Tomorrow's another day, even if it's like the most horrible day of my life and I feel like just a used piece of garbage. There are days that I've had that I just feel like I'm at the end of my rope. You take care of your kids, and then your kids are, they're kids. They don't appreciate it. And those kind of things are thrown in your face as a single parent. And then maybe your own family is critical, which, by the way, coming from certain dynamics and certain dysfunctional families set you up to fall into these abusive relationships. And that has also been part of my journey, is realizing that through therapy. I've read a ton of books. I've listened to a ton of books on Audible. There was one woman who had a domestic violence podcast, only one, interestingly, and she stopped doing it, but it was insightful. If anything, it helps you realize that you're not alone. And regardless of whether you're a mom with kids, just being a woman and knowing you are not the only person out there who is suffering from this. It is not your fault, and help you reclaim your life and your individuality and love every bit of that. And that's another really important part of this, is just loving yourself. Other support things I've done to be mindful are, there's an app called Motivate that has awesome quotes that it sends me every day, at least once a day. And if certain messages like really resonate with me, I save them and I print them out. My refrigerator has all kinds of inspiring messages. And that was actually something that one of my nurse practitioner professors had recommended, because she had been a single mom when she was getting her PhD, and I had briefly started my doctorate as a nurse practitioner last year. And she told me that when I asked her like what kind of things like really helped you to get through this and be successful, she told me take inspiring messages and post them up around your house, and things that really resonate with you and your soul. And I 100% am on board with that, and it's been super helpful. And I like to think that it's helpful for my kids too, because at the end of the day, this getting a divorce and then the trauma from my ex-husband, and then I briefly had an ex-boyfriend who took the abuse to another level, to the point where he had 7 domestic violence charges against him. This is something that I hate to admit has affected my kids in some ways. So that's why it's really important for me to become so much more self-aware. Having the responsibility of the children has definitely been a fire under my rear end to fix myself. And find out why it is that I had fallen into, and how can I prevent it, fallen into those cycles of abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, whether it's a romantic partner, or whether it's friends or bosses. And a lot of it is listening to your body, being in certain situations and realizing like, okay, I'm feeling anxious in this situation and I'm at work and I just had this communication. Why am I feeling this way right now? And kind of taking a step back. And again, that's where meditation is really helpful, even 10 minutes, like really centering yourself. And I find that the more that I practice that, I have these moments of clarity. It could be while I'm just driving alone in my car, listening to music or doing the dishes. All of a sudden, something will just hit me, and I right away see things as they are, and I'm able to dissect that emotion and where it's coming from and what is that dysfunctional part of that relationship or that communication that my body said no thank you. And it's also about learning to set firm boundaries and valuing yourself and knowing that, not just, saying it is helpful, but it really takes a lot of inner work to realize your self value and your self worth. I've heard this several times, like the way that we speak to ourselves is more destructive and mean than we would talk to anyone else. We break ourselves down and we break down our own self esteem, which in turn sets us up for being taken advantage of for someone who might say things around the lines of the things that we're telling ourselves that we believe. And so we do not think that we are worthy. We are not worthy of love from anyone but this special abusive person who has come into our life. And they've taken pity on us because they see something in us that's worthy. My words of wisdom are to find yourself and find your values. If it takes sitting down and writing on a paper everything that is special about you and what makes you use and hanging that up in the bathroom every morning so you can see that and appreciate, that's me. Yeah, I'm special because of this. And there is no other person on this earth who is like this because that is me and that's the way I was born and my life experiences. And this is the value that I bring to the world. And it's really increasing that self value. And, one really important thing is like women need to know you are not stuck in these relationships. You are not. It is scary as hell and you feel like you might literally be killed, or your children will be killed, or your dog, or your cat, or your family or friends, that this person will retaliate. But it's literally survival. You have to get out. And there are resources to help. However, they are limited. I've not had good experiences with unfortunately, it was a very eye-opening experience with the legal system. I had on a doorbell video, I had my ex-boyfriend assaulting me, and he was not charged with, he had 7 domestic violence charges, and he didn't have to go to prison. He got 1 year of probation, and if he screws up, he has to go to prison for 2 months. I even went into the police station and I had a forensic nurse exam where they took pictures. I had bruises here on my neck. Um, I'm sure I had probably a minor TBI because every single day he was going like this and slamming my head and shaking it at least once a day. And I also want to throw that out there that makes you a vulnerable person. So when family and friends and even the police blame you, they blame the victim, that you actually have a disability at that point when they have slammed your head against the wall or slammed their hands on your head or shook your brain up. Even if it's not visible on an MRI, which it usually isn't, with these minor TBIs, they also affect your mood. They affect so many things that you think that you're just losing your mind and you're a hopeless case. And the abuser loves it like that. The most dangerous time in a relationship is when you decide to leave. So it's really important to make sure that you have a precise strategic plan for when you leave that abusive relationship. And there is an awesome app out there. And a lot of this I did digging on myself really for resources because I just did not find good guidance anywhere, including the domestic violence hotline. That was very nice for venting, but as far as making me feel safe or giving me good, like hands-on practical advice, no. There's no practical advice that anyone could have given me other than I had to do my own research and listen to books and look up apps, and I had to empower myself. And in a way, that's a bad thing. But again, looking at the positive part of that, that also helped empower me and know that I knew how to do this and I could get myself out and that I wanted to, because if I didn't want to, I wouldn't have done all that research. And so I think the app is called My Plan. And there are a ton of resources out there. I'm not saying that the domestic violence hotline is not a good resource at all. At a minimum, you can go to the domestic violence hotline website, and get a ton of resources that can take you down various rabbit holes that will be helpful and empowering to you in your specific situation. But the most important is just remember, you are not doing yourself a favor as a survivor by staying in that situation, because even if you don't think that your partner is someone who would kill you, There are a lot of numbers out there, statistics for women who were killed by people they never in a million years would have thought would have physically hurt them or gone to the extreme of killing them. And I'm sure probably a lot of that was in, well, not even necessarily moments of passion, because there's a lot of psychology involved with the narcissistic abusive behavior and comorbidities with psychopath and sociopath and things like that, that they do these things and they have no remorse, and you deserved it because you harmed them and they are the victim, not you. So it really comes down to looking at yourself, being in a hostage situation. That was what helped me. Is I'm a hostage. Pretend you're in war and you're a hostage. Well, get yourself the hell out of there so that you can live. Because if you stay in that situation, you're either going to literally be a slave or you're going to die. So it's your choice. You can either be a slave to someone else and live life by their rules, or you can die. You will possibly get murdered. So get out of there the safest as you can, disappear. Order of protection is great because at least you have a paper trail. Will it physically protect you? No, it won't. I mean, I've had an order of protection on my ex boyfriend now for a year and a half. It expires in a few months. And, I'm kind of scared because he's crazy. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing, that fear like never leaves you 100%. You're always looking over your shoulder. But I'm a much stronger person now. Um,
Something that you said that I really liked was that one, you're not alone. And in order to take your life back is to get out of there, but do it strategically. Don't just make any like rational decisions. Cause like somebody like myself, I was really scared on how my ex would react or what is he gonna say? What is he gonna do? So it's so important to go to somebody you trust. Like you
absolutely.
said, even if it's like a helpline, just talk to somebody
Vent.
and make a plan. Yeah.
Just know that it's valid. Your feelings are
Mhm.
valid and your thoughts are valid and your experience is valid. If anything, that the hotline is good for that, validating your
It is.
experience and that you're not crazy. And yes, it is abuse.
Absolutely. Wow, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us
Yeah, my
today.
pleasure.
It has been incredible and very empowering.
Thank you.
So tell us, where can people support you? Where can people stay in touch with you?
So I am on Instagram as Self Care for You LLC, and it's self care number four letter U LLC. You can also find my website, selfcareforyoullc.com. And again, that's also spelled with the number four and the letter U, selfcareforyoullc.com. I do telehealth consultations, health and wellness coaching, life coaching. 100% on board. If someone happens to hear this and is in a really bad situation, I've been there and I want to help you the best that I can to help you empower yourself. So just know that you're not alone. I am also on Substack. I write various blog articles as self care number four letter U on Substack and Facebook as well. And LinkedIn,
Amazing.
actually. LinkedIn, Rachel Aichler, FNP. You can
Awesome. I
find
will
me on
have
there.
all of those links linked down below in the show notes so people can stay in touch with you.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear and, you know, people share their experiences and empower each other, because I really think that's important. When and if you're ready and you feel comfortable doing it, it can be very empowering to let this all out, because I don't know that I could have been this expressive about this situation 2 years ago. This is only from like participating in women's support groups and, participating in various things online that really empowered me. So but that's how you get empowered. You empower each other and
We're
support.
all here for one another. We're not alone. We just have to
Absolutely.
find our
Never,
tribe.
never think you're alone. Don't, no matter what your partner says, do not believe it. That is poison.
Yes, I agree completely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Anita, so much for inviting me. And I really enjoyed like getting this out there. And I really hope this empowers a lot of people.
Yes, I think this is going to be helpful for so many people, and I'm excited for people to hear this and to know that they can reach out to people. They can, because, like we were saying earlier, a lot of times these people who have narcissistic traits, they try to isolate you. So
Absolutely.
the point of this is to know that they have a community to go to. So I'm
Absolutely.
really excited.
There's a book that I want to show. This made a huge
Yeah.
difference.
Why does he do
This is Lundy Bancroft. It's called Why Does He Do That?
that?
Behind the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men. And this
Wow.
book is made by a guy who was a counselor for abusers, not abusees, like men who abused women, and the court ordered counseling for them for abuse counseling. This man did this for, I think, at least 30 years and then wrote a book about all of his experiences. And it is so insightful and so empowering. And I'll provide you with this information too, because when I listen to this, it's also made a world of difference in helping me to empower other women and be more aware of what's going on in their situation that they probably are not aware of.
Thank you so much. I think that'll be very helpful for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
So thank you everyone for joining us today for another episode of Nourished Inside Out.